Welcome back to First Edition. Thanks for joining us. Joining us now is economics editor at The Australian, Adam Creighton. Good morning to you, Adam. Let's begin with the story on The Australian today about the RBA and the banks. The board of major banks still demanding bigger profits from its customers despite those rate cuts recently.
You can't really blame the banks, though, can you? I mean, they are incentivised to make as much money as possible, and that's exactly what they're doing. I mean, people do have a choice to go to smaller banks, and get a lower interest rate on the home loan or a higher deposit rate, but they don't do that. So look, certainly it's a good story. It's an interesting story. The big four Australian banks are certainly amongst the most profitable large banks in the world, but I do have some sympathy for their behaviour.
I do as well, in a way, Adam, but we have the big four banks. People bank with them because of the relative stability or perceived stability, and that's why they go to the big four. And aren't they just taking advantage of that?
Yeah, look, I think that's partly true. This has always been a puzzle to me, why especially borrowers do gravitate to the big four because of their so-called stability, because, of course, the banks are giving them money. So if there's any problem, the borrower's fine. It's not like they're going to lose their money. They're actually getting money. But nevertheless, the brand power of the big four is extraordinary, and people do gravitate to it. We've had 20 years now or more of deregulation in the financial sector. There are plenty of competitors, but the market share of the big four has actually increased. I think for home loans, it's about 85% of all home loans by value.
Adam, what are your thoughts on the AMP chairman David Murray dismissing key recommendations of the APRA review?
Yeah, look, certainly David Murray spoke out today saying that he was a bit worried about one of the recommendations, which was to give APRA some responsibility over the returns of super funds. And look, I understand where he's coming from. Certainly when the government steps in and says that we're going to look at something, there is a tendency for people not to pay attention anymore. This is the great kind of moral hazard issue. But look, let's face it, no one is really paying any attention anyway to their super fund returns. So I just think that sort of having some sort of threshold oversight of extremely poor performing funds is probably not a bad thing for APRA to have.
Yeah, it's true. And also this debate about the super guarantee, it's already legislated to go to 12%. But, Adam, this is not going to happen for a couple of years, but there's a political tactic here. I don't know what it is quite yet, but why are Liberal MPs debating this now?
Yeah, look, well, I think it's a really big philosophical issue. It's a really big economic issue. Certainly the Liberal Party opposed compulsory super when it first started in the late 80s, early 90s. So they eventually gave in. They kind of gave up on this issue. But at a time of low wage growth, I think when you're seeing the compulsory savings rate about to go to 12% over the next few years, it certainly starts increasing, I think, to 10 in 2021. This is obviously going to be an issue that galvanises many of the backbenchers. And look, I think that they're right. I'm kind of glad that they're speaking out now. I think probably one of the reasons why they are speaking out now is the government will in the next few months have to choose the people who will lead this final inquiry into the effectiveness of superannuation. And so those particular individuals will have a huge influence, because their recommendations, say, that come out early next year, will be hugely influential on whether the guarantee does go to 12 or not.
Adam, your report yesterday indicated that as many as 7 Liberal MPs had expressed concerns to Treasurer Josh Frydenberg about that rate increasing to 12%. In the Sydney Morning Herald today, there is as many as 12 Liberal MPs. So that number seems to be increasing. At what point does a rebellion become an all-out mutiny?
Look, that's a very good question. The 12 figure is really interesting. I haven't actually seen that story yet. I should take a look soon. But look, I mean, I think 12 is a very big proportion of the Liberal Party room. And certainly there are a lot of government ministers I know full well who have a lot of sympathy with not increasing the guarantee. So, I mean, I'd say half the government kind of sympathises, but the politics of it are just so vicious, because as soon as the government says anything, and we saw some of it yesterday, immediately Labor is out there saying that the Liberals are attacking people's retirements, using extremely emotional language, even though it's wrong, but it is a good kind of political argument. And the government doesn't really want yet to be facing off against the unions and also the financial services sector, which is the most powerful industry in Australia.
Yeah, it seems so. We're going to hear from the RBA governor later this week as well. Adam, what's he likely to say? Because his words seem to be bullets when it comes to the markets.
Yeah, well, look, the Reserve Bank governor seems to be a little bit all over the place at the moment. I mean, of course, he's cut rates twice in 2 months. And, of course, there's a very, very high chance that there'll be a third cut by the end of the year. So that would suggest that the economy is weak. But, of course, he has been saying recently to the Treasurer and to journalists that the economy is strong and the foundations are good. So I think he's kind of balancing on a tightrope a little bit. The reality is the growth figures for the second quarter, which are out fairly soon, will probably be quite weak too. So that's going to require some public relations massaging, I think.
PR, well, we saw that with Josh Frydenberg, didn't we? I thought that was an extraordinary piece of theatre, really, with that picture opportunity. Yeah. And look, I think the RBA governor is independent. But Adam, what did you think about the particular line that you used? It was jarring, I thought, which is a political line. More Australians are employed than ever before. Yeah, because there are more Australians than ever before.
Exactly. Look, that was a very odd look, and I think probably the RBA regrets that meeting. I mean, in his defence, Philo was not a politician, and he was somewhat bamboozled by all the cameras and the journalists there. You know, our Treasurer, of course, Josh Frydenberg, is very good with the media, so he's a real expert in that regard, and I think it was probably a win for him, but it wasn't a win for the RBA. Yeah. So I wouldn't be expecting too many more of those meetings anytime soon.
Yeah, certainly, I agree with that. A win for Josh Frydenberg. Being able to convince the RBA governor to do that, quite a feat. Adam, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Laura.